My phone buzzed with a message that still makes my stomach twist when I remember it. I'm quitting my job, you'll support us while I find myself. It was from my sister, Brooke. That single text lit a fuse that had been waiting for years. Within weeks, I would uncover hidden debts, be banned from Thanksgiving, and pack my bags for London. But here's the twist, my revenge didn't come from payback. It came from finally saying two words that changed my life, not my problem. If you've ever had family take you for granted, or tried to guilt trip you into paying their way, this story is going to hit home. Smash that like button, subscribe for more real revenge stories, and let's dive into how I finally escaped years of manipulation, with the most satisfying ending you could imagine. My name is Vanessa, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the dependable one. The steady hand. The one who got straight A's not because I was naturally brilliant, but because I stayed up past midnight grinding through assignments while my sister Brooke snuck out to parties. From childhood, Brooke wore the invisible crown in our family. She was creative, passionate, a free spirit. Those words were repeated so often at family dinners that they became part of the wallpaper of our lives. When she failed a math test, Mom would chuckle and say, "Well, numbers just aren't her gift." When I aced the same test, the reaction was a distracted "Of course you did, Ness, you're reliable." Reliable. That was my label. Not brilliant. Not radiant. Just reliable. By high school, the pattern had crystallized into something harder to swallow. Brooke wanted a new phone? Dad took overtime shifts and handed it to her with a smile. I wanted the same? I was told to get a part-time job. And so I did. At 16, I was working at a grocery store on weekends while Brooke was trying out for another school play she'd quit halfway through. It might sound petty, but these little differences cut deeper than I admitted. I grew up learning that Brooke's dreams were treasures worth funding, and my needs were burdens to be managed. Fast forward a decade. I was 28, working in finance, stable, responsible, the person you'd call if your world was collapsing. Brooke was 26 and had already cycled through 6 different jobs. Yoga instructor. Boutique shop manager. Makeup artist. Travel blogger. For every new career, she'd demand support, either directly or indirectly. The first time she called me crying about overdue rent, I paid. It was $600, and I told myself, she's family, and it's just this once. But once became twice. Twice became every few months. And every time I opened my banking app and sent her another transfer, I felt something inside me erode. It wasn't just the money. It was the silence from my parents afterward, the way they never asked if helping her was straining me. Instead, they praised me for being so responsible, so supportive. I realized they didn't see me as a daughter anymore. I was a safety net. One night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a bill of my own. My car needed repairs I couldn't put off, but my savings were depleted because of Brooke's latest emergency. My hands shook as I calculated the numbers. I was a grown woman with a career, yet I couldn't afford basic needs because I kept covering for my sister's failures. The breaking point, though, wasn't financial. It was emotional. I remember standing in the hallway at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, carrying a tray of dishes back to the kitchen. My mom was laughing with Brooke, telling her, "Don't worry about helping. Vanessa's got it." That one sentence was like a punch in the chest. Vanessa's got it. Always. I felt invisible, except for the weight of everyone else's mess. My throat burned, but I smiled and said nothing. Because that's what reliable daughters do. But under the surface, resentment brewed. I began to notice details I had ignored before. Brooke's new clothes that didn't match her claimed struggles. The way my dad's face hardened when I brought up wanting to travel, yet lit up when Brooke suggested a soul-searching trip to Bali. The subtle hierarchy was unmistakable. Brooke's whims mattered, my boundaries did not. Then came the text message that would change everything. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was at my desk, buried in spreadsheets, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, half expecting another work notification. But no, it was Brooke. I'm quitting my job, you'll support us while I find myself. My stomach twisted. At first, I thought I misread it. But no. The words were clear, cold, and entitled. Not, can you help me? Not, I'm struggling. But you will. Something inside me snapped. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, my pulse pounding so loudly it drowned out the office noise around me. I reread the message over and over, disbelief curdling into fury. Did she truly see me as nothing more than her personal bank? For years, I had been the fallback plan. But this? This was different. This wasn't desperation, it was entitlement. And entitlement disguised as family obligation is poison. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, then typed 2 words. Not my problem. And I hit send. In that moment, something shifted in me. It was like cutting a rope that had kept me tethered to the bottom of the ocean. I didn't know it yet, but that small act would unleash an avalanche of guilt trips, manipulation, and betrayal, culminating in a discovery so shocking it nearly broke me. But for the first time in years, I felt free. The reply had barely left my phone before the backlash began. My screen lit up with a flood of messages, first from Brooke, then my parents, then even a few relatives who rarely texted me. Are you serious, Vanessa? You're just going to abandon me like this? She's your sister, how could you say something so cruel? You've always been the selfish one, hiding behind your job while Brooke actually lives. Selfish. The word made my chest ache. I sat frozen at my desk, the glow of my computer screen casting shadows across my hands. My palms were damp, my throat tight. For so long, I had believed their definition of me, reliable, steady, responsible. But selfish? That was new. And it was weaponized like a dagger. By the end of the day, I had 12 missed calls from my mother alone. I ignored every one of them. When I finally caved and opened her texts, I felt my stomach drop. Until you do the right thing and sign your sister's loan, you are banned from Thanksgiving. I blinked at the words, stunned. Banned. Like a child being punished. Like family dinners were conditional, something I had to earn by sacrificing myself. But the part that chilled me wasn't the ban. It was the number attached to Brooke's mess. My mother's message continued. Her loan is only $110,000, and she just needs a cosigner. You have a stable income. It won't affect you. My vision blurred, rage pulsing hot in my temples. Only $110,000? As if it were pocket change? As if my entire financial future could be tethered to Brooke's whims without consequence? I typed back furiously, do not involve me in this. I will not sign anything. Then I shoved my phone into my desk drawer, too nauseous to look at it again. That night, though, sleep wouldn't come. My mind replayed the message over and over. Something didn't add up. Why would they pressure me to co-sign if Brooke already had a loan? Did she even qualify? Or worse, had she already used my name? Fear clawed at my chest. I got out of bed and opened my laptop, logging into my accounts. What I saw nearly made me collapse. There were inquiries on my credit report, recent ones. Applications I hadn't made. Connections to accounts I didn't recognize. A cold sweat broke over me. My pulse hammered in my ears. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was theft. The rest of the night blurred into a frantic marathon of phone calls. I froze my credit, placed alerts with the bank, and secured my accounts with new passwords. My voice shook as I explained the situation to each representative, ashamed to admit that my own sister might have tried to drag me down with her. When dawn crept through my blinds, my phone showed 22 missed calls. My mother. My father. Brooke. Even my aunt, who had nothing to do with any of this. I didn't pick up a single one. Instead, I stared at the sunlight crawling across my floor and whispered to myself, not my problem. It became a mantra, almost like armor. Every time the guilt pressed in, every time I imagined Brooke crying or my parents' disappointment, I repeated it. Not my problem. But the truth was, it was my problem. Not because I owed Brooke anything, but because for years, I had been conditioned to believe that her survival depended on me. Breaking that cycle felt like tearing skin from bone. Later that evening, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She knocked and knocked, her voice muffled but sharp through the door. Vanessa, open this door right now. You're destroying your family over money. Brooke is your sister. You're supposed to help her. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a mug of tea with trembling hands. My chest felt like it might cave in. But I didn't move. I let her knock until her voice grew hoarse, until finally the hallway fell silent. When I peeked through the peephole 20 minutes later, she was gone. And in that silence, for the first time, I realized something. If my family's love came with a price tag, then maybe it was never love to begin with. The night after my mom's pounding on my door, I sat at my dining table with a pen, paper, and a tight knot in my chest. My apartment felt different, quieter, heavier. The hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual, as if they were mocking the silence from the people I used to call family. I scribbled numbers onto a page, my savings, my monthly expenses, the little cushion I had left after years of helping. It wasn't much. Certainly not enough to absorb $110,000 in debt. But the truth was clear, I had to stop being everyone's safety net before they pulled me under completely. I thought back to all the times Brooke had sworn it was the last time. The rent she couldn't cover. The car insurance she forgot. The credit card accidentally maxed out. Each time, I had stepped in, heart pounding, wanting to be the good sister. And each time, she'd smiled, promised to do better, then didn't. Now, I was staring down evidence that she had gone even further, using my name without permission. My stomach churned as I logged back into my credit report, combing through line after line. There it was again, an inquiry from a bank in the city, dated just 3 weeks ago. My name. My social security number. But not my signature. For years, I had convinced myself that keeping peace was worth the price. That if I helped her one more time, maybe she'd finally learn responsibility. But that night, something inside me hardened. This wasn't peace. It was prison. The next morning, I called the HR department at my job. I'd been offered a position overseas months earlier, London. At the time, I hesitated, worried about leaving my family behind. But now, with everything unraveling, the hesitation was gone. I'd like to accept the transfer, I told them, my voice steadier than I felt. As I hung up, a wave of relief washed through me. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself. Not Brooke. Not my parents. Me. That night, the calls and texts came again. My father left a voicemail, his voice low and furious. You've embarrassed this family. Sign the loan and fix this. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, and whispered into the dark, no. I won't. It was terrifying, yes. But beneath the fear, a spark of something new flickered, freedom. I didn't know yet what the future would hold. I just knew this, I wasn't their pawn anymore. The weeks leading up to my departure felt like walking through a storm. Every day, another wave of messages crashed against me, accusations, guilt trips, pleas. Brooke is falling apart because of you. Your selfishness will destroy this family. You'll regret abandoning your sister when she has no one. At first, the words pierced me. I cried alone at night, staring at the half-packed suitcase in my bedroom. But every morning, I woke up with a sharper sense of resolve. Their anger wasn't proof that I was wrong, it was proof that I was finally refusing to play my old role. The day I boarded my flight to London, my phone buzzed with one last message from Brooke. You're ruining my life. I hope you're happy. I stared at the words until the boarding call echoed through the terminal. For the first time, I didn't reply. I slipped my phone into my bag, walked down the jet bridge, and exhaled as the airplane doors closed behind me. When the plane lifted off the runway, I pressed my forehead to the cool window. The city I'd grown up in shrank below me, its lights scattering like dying embers. My chest ached, but beneath the ache was something I hadn't felt in years: lightness. London was a whirlwind. My new office overlooked the Thames, the city humming with life around me. I walked to work past cafes and bookstores, breathing in air that tasted of freedom and possibility. No one here saw me as a safety net. No one expected me to fix their mistakes. For once, I was just me. Of course, the calls didn't stop. In fact, they intensified. I woke up one morning to 47 unread messages, my family's desperation escalating into fury. My father: "Your sister is drowning and you're drinking tea in London like nothing's wrong." My mother: "We raised you better than this. You've turned cold. Brooke, I hope you know I'll never forgive you." I read them all, heart racing. Then, slowly, I hit delete. One by one, the messages disappeared from my screen, as if I were sweeping cobwebs from the corners of my life. The first weekend in London, I stood on Westminster Bridge at sunset. The water shimmered, the sky painted in gold and pink. Tourists bustled around me, their laughter blending with the rumble of double-decker buses. And in the middle of that chaos, I felt calm. I thought about all the Thanksgivings I had sacrificed, all the tears I had swallowed, all the times I had bent myself into knots for people who never once bent for me. And now, here I was, half a world away, whole for the first time. For once, Brooke's problems weren't mine. And I finally understood: walking away wasn't abandonment. It was survival. Months passed in London, and with every day that slipped by, the guilt that once gnawed at me softened. I built a rhythm: work during the day, long walks by the Thames in the evenings, and quiet weekends exploring markets and libraries. My life was no longer punctuated by frantic calls, emotional blackmail, or financial emergencies that weren't mine. Then, one chilly March morning, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Brooke. My first instinct was to ignore it. But something made me pause. The message wasn't long. "Vanessa. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I leaned on you. I got a job. It's hard, but I'm trying. Thank you for saying no." I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. The words didn't sound like the entitled Brooke I had known my whole life. They sounded raw. Humbled. Real. For a long time, I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen. A part of me wanted to burst into tears, to forgive everything instantly, to step back into the old role of savior. But another part, the stronger part, reminded me of every sleepless night, every unpaid bill, every time I was treated as a resource instead of a sister. So I typed slowly, carefully. "I'm glad you're trying, Brooke. I hope you keep going. But I can't be your safety net anymore. If we're going to rebuild, it has to be different." Her reply came a minute later. "I understand." That was it. 2 simple words, but they felt heavier than the loan, heavier than the guilt, heavier than every accusation my parents had thrown at me. For the first time, Brooke wasn't demanding. She wasn't manipulating. She was accepting. I closed my phone and walked to the window. Outside, the city stretched wide and alive, the sun breaking through a thin veil of clouds. I took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill my lungs. Revenge stories usually end with a grand takedown, a dramatic moment of humiliation, a villain begging for mercy. But mine didn't look like that. My revenge was quieter. Softer. It was sitting in a London apartment, knowing my accounts were safe, my choices were mine, and my sister had finally begun to grow because I stepped away. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about making someone pay, it's about refusing to pay for them ever again. And for me, it all started with 2 simple words. Not my problem.